Jake Collins wiped the grease from his hands with a dirty rag and looked at the clock on the wall. Lunchtime, finally. He had been working on fixing air filters all morning and his back was starting to hurt. The New Horizons space station was huge, with thousands of people living and working on it. Jake was just 17 years old, but he had been working as a mechanic's helper for 6 months now. The station was special. It was where aliens from all over the galaxy came to learn how to fight better. Jake had seen many different kinds of aliens since he started working here. Some were tall and thin, others were short and thick. Some had fur, others had scales. But they all came here for the same reason, to become better warriors. Jake walked through the long hallways toward the dining area. The walls were made of metal and painted white. There were windows that showed the stars outside. Sometimes Jake would stop and look at the stars, thinking about home on Earth. But today he was too hungry to stop when he got to the dining hall. Jake got his food from the machines, rice, some kind of meat, and vegetables. The food was okay, but not as good as his mom's cooking back home. He looked around for a place to sit. Most of the tables were full of alien trainees. They were young aliens who came here to learn fighting skills. Jake found an empty table near a group of aliens who were talking loudly. He could understand them because everyone on the station used translation devices. The aliens were different species. One looked like a big lizard with blue skin. Another one had 4 arms and was covered in white fur. The third one looked almost human, but had purple skin and big black eyes. The Emperor Gantal men are the best fighters in the whole galaxy, the lizard alien was saying. My father told me that just one of them can defeat 100 normal soldiers. Cannot be true, said the 4-armed alien. How is that good? It is true. The purple-skinned alien joined in. I heard that they trained for 20 years before they could. Even call themselves Emperor Gantal men. They know secrets of fighting that no one else knows. Jake listened while he ate his food. He had heard about the Emperor Gantal men before. Everyone in the galaxy knew about them. They were like legends. Warriors so good that other aliens would run away just hearing their name. I bet they are not. That's special, Jake said loudly. The 3 aliens turned to look at him. Jake felt proud that he got their attention. What did you say, human? Asked the lizard alien. His voice sounded angry. I said they are probably not that special, Jake repeated. He stood up and walked over to their table. My grandpa used to train soldiers way better than those Gantal guys. The aliens looked at each other and started laughing. The 4-armed alien laughed so hard that he had to hold his stomach. A human training better soldiers than the Emperor Gantal men? The purple alien said between laughs. That is the funniest thing I heard all day. Jake felt his face getting hot. He did not like being laughed at. It is not funny. My grandpa Walter Collins was the best trainer ever. He could have easily trained those Emperor Gantal men if he wanted to. Sure he could, the lizard alien said, still laughing. And I am secretly the Emperor of the galaxy. More aliens at nearby tables started listening to the conversation. Some of them were laughing too. Jake felt embarrassed but also angry. Knew his grandpa was special. His mom always told him stories about how brave and smart Grandpa Walter was during the war. You do not know what you are talking about, Jake said louder. My grandpa knew fighting techniques that would make your Emperor Gantal men look like babies. The dining hall was getting quieter as more aliens stopped eating to listen. Jake noticed that some of the older aliens, the instructors, were also watching now. But he was too angry to stop talking. Human soldiers are better than any alien soldiers. Jake continued. My grandpa proved it when he trained the best warriors in the galaxy. He could have taught those Emperor Gantal men everything they know. Suddenly, the dining hall became completely quiet. Jake heard heavy footsteps behind him, turned around and saw Commander Vexar walking toward him. Commander Vexar was huge, even for an alien. He was taller than any human Jake had ever seen. His skin was covered in black scales that looked like armor. His eyes were bright yellow and seemed to glow in the light. He had claws instead of fingers, and his teeth were sharp, like a shark's. Commander Vexar was famous on the station. He was one of the best fighting instructors in the galaxy. Jake had seen him training alien warriors before. He was fast and strong and scary. Even the toughest alien students were afraid of him. What did you just say, human child? Commander Vexar's voice was deep and sounded like rocks grinding together. Jake felt his heart beating fast. He wanted to run away, but his legs felt frozen. All the aliens in the dining hall were staring at him. He could not back down now, or everyone would think he was a coward. "I said my grandpa could have trained the Emperor Gantal, Jake said, but his voice was quieter now. Commander Vexar's yellow eyes seemed to get brighter. He stepped closer to Jake. Jake could smell something like burning metal coming from the alien's breath. "You dare to insult the greatest warriors in the galaxy?" Commander Vexar said. "You think a weak human could train the Emperor Gantal? You know nothing about fighting, nothing about honor, nothing about what it means to be a true warrior." Jake opened his mouth to argue, but before he could say anything, Commander Vexar's clawed hand moved faster than Jake could see. The alien's hand hit Jake across the face with a loud slapping sound. The hit was so hard that Jake flew backward and crashed into a table. Food scattered everywhere as Jake fell to the floor. Jake's face felt like it was on fire. He could taste blood in his mouth. His head was spinning, and he could not focus his eyes properly. He tried to get up, but his body would not listen to him. Commander Vexar stood over Jake like a giant black mountain. No human could ever understand true combat, he said loudly so everyone could hear. Your species is weak and soft. You have no warrior tradition, no honor, no strength. The idea that a human could train the Emperor Gantal is not just wrong, it is insulting to every real warrior in the galaxy. Jake tried to speak, but only a groan came out. His jaw hurt too much to open properly. "You will be removed from this station for spreading lies and showing disrespect," Commander Vexar continued. "I will report your behavior to the station commander. Maybe sometime in detention will teach you to keep your mouth shut about things you do not understand." Alien instructor turned and walked away, his heavy footsteps echoing in the silent dining hall. The other aliens slowly went back to eating and talking, but many of them kept looking at Jake with expressions of pity or amusement. Jake finally managed to sit up. His face was swollen and hurt badly. He could feel tears in his eyes, but he tried not to cry in front of everyone. Few aliens helped him stand up, but they did not say anything to him. Jake looked around the dining hall and saw that everyone was avoiding eye contact with him. He stumbled out of the dining hall and back toward the maintenance section where he worked. His grandpa Walter really was special. Jake knew it. But now, he was in big trouble, and he did not know how to prove that he was telling the truth. All he knew was that he had to find a way to show Commander Vexar that humans were not as weak as the alien thought. As Jake walked through the hallways, holding his swollen face, he made a promise to himself. He would find a way to prove that. His grandpa was the best trainer in the galaxy, even if it got him into more trouble. The Emperor Gantal men were great warriors, but they learned from someone. And Jake was sure that someone was his grandpa Walter Collins. Jake walked slowly back to the maintenance bay. His face hurt with every step he took. The left side of his face was swollen and felt hot to touch. He could barely open his left eye. Other people in the hallways stared at him as he passed by. Some looked worried, others just curious. Jake kept his head down and tried to walk faster. When he reached the maintenance bay, he saw Pete Rodriguez working on a broken air recycling unit. Pete was 53 years old and had been working as a mechanic on the station for 5 years. He was not very tall, but he had strong hands from years of fixing things. His hair was gray, and his face had lines from smiling a lot. Pete was always kind to Jake and never got angry, even when Jake made mistakes. Pete looked up when he heard Jake come in. His eyes went wide when he saw Jake's swollen face. "What happened to you?" Pete asked. He dropped his tools and walked over to Jake quickly. Jake sat down on a workbench and put his head in his hands. "I got into trouble in the dining hall," he said quietly. Pete got a first aid kit from a cabinet and started cleaning the cut on Jake's lip. "Tell me what happened," he said gently. Jake told Pete everything, explained how he heard the aliens talking about the Emperor Gantal. He told Pete how he said his grandpa could have trained better warriors. He described how everyone laughed at him and how angry he got. Finally, he told Pete about Commander Vexar hitting him and threatening to kick him off the station. Pete listened without saying anything, continued cleaning Jake's wounds, and put ice on the swollen parts of his face. When Jake finished talking, Pete was quiet for a long time.
At,
What was your grandfather's full name? Pete asked finally.
at,
Walter Collins, Jake said. Why? Pete's hand stopped moving. He stared at Jake with a strange expression on his face. Walter Collins from Texas? Served in the military for 25 years? Jake nodded. Yes, that is him. How do you know that? Pete sat down on another workbench across from Jake. He looked like he had seen a ghost. I knew your grandfather, he said slowly. We served together. Really? Jake sat up straighter, ignoring the pain in his face. You were in the military too? Not the regular military, Pete said. He looked around the maintenance bay to make sure they were alone. We were in something called the Shadow Training Corps. It was a secret program that most people never heard about. Jake leaned forward. What kind of secret program? Pete was quiet again for a moment. He seemed to be thinking about something important. Before humans became part of the galactic community, there were secret meetings between human governments and some alien species. These meetings happened many years before most people knew aliens existed. I never heard about this, Jake said. That was the point, Pete replied. It was supposed to stay secret. Some alien governments wanted to learn new fighting techniques. They heard that humans were good at warfare, even though we were not as strong or fast as many alien species. So they asked for human military advisors to help train their soldiers. Pete stood up and walked to his tool locker. He pressed some buttons on a hidden panel that Jake had never noticed before. A small compartment opened up. Pete pulled out a datapad that looked very old. Your grandfather Walter was one of the best instructors in the Shadow Training Corps, Pete continued. He was chosen for the most important missions. I was his partner on several assignments. Pete turned on the datapad and showed it to Jake. The screen showed a photo of a younger Pete standing next to a man Jake recognized from old family photos. It was his grandfather Walter, but he looked different. He was wearing military clothes and had a serious expression on his face. In the photo, they were standing next to some very large alien creatures that Jake had never seen before. Those are Gantal warriors, Pete said, pointing at the aliens in the photo. This picture was taken on a moon called Zarian Prime. We spent 8 months there training a special unit of Gantal soldiers. Jake's mouth fell open. You really trained the Emperor Gantalman? Not exactly, Pete said. We trained the soldiers who would later become the Emperor Gantalman. At that time, they were just regular Gantal warriors. But the training we gave them was so effective that they became the most feared fighting unit in their empire. Pete scrolled through more photos on the datapad. Jake saw his grandfather teaching combat techniques to groups of alien soldiers. There were detailed training notes and reports written in his grandfather's handwriting. Walter was amazing at his job, Pete said. He could look at any alien species and figure out the best way to train them. He understood that different species needed different approaches. The Gantal warriors were very strong and had natural armor, but they were slow and relied too much on their physical advantages. What did Grandpa teach them? Jake asked. He taught them to think differently about fighting, Pete explained. Most Gantal warriors would just charge at their enemies and try to overpower them. Walter showed them how to use strategy, how to set traps, how to fight smart instead of just fighting hard. Pete found another photo that showed Walter demonstrating a fighting move to a group of Gantal warriors. The aliens were much bigger than Walter, but they were all watching him carefully and copying his movements. Walter also taught them what we called dirty fighting, Pete continued. The Gantal had a warrior code that said certain fighting techniques were dishonorable. Walter convinced them that staying alive was more important than following old rules. He taught them to use their environment as a weapon, to attack weak points, to be unpredictable. Jake looked at more photos and documents on the datapad. Everything Pete was showing him proved that his grandfather really had trained some of the galaxy's best warriors. Why did you keep this secret? Jake asked. Pete's expression became serious. Because it was dangerous information. Think about it, Jake. If other alien species knew that humans had trained the Emperor Gantal men, they would start asking questions. They would want to know what other military secrets humans had. Some alien. Governments might see humans as a threat instead of allies. But this proves that humans are good at fighting, Jake said. It proves that we are not weak like Commander Vexar said. Yes, it does, Pete agreed. But it also proves that we have been keeping secrets from our alien friends. That could cause problems. The galactic community is built on trust and cooperation. If aliens found out that humans had secret military programs, they might not trust us anymore. Jake thought about this. He was excited to learn that his grandfather was even more amazing than he had imagined. But he was also starting to understand why Pete looked worried. "There is something else you should know," Pete said. "The Shadow Training Corps was not just about training aliens. We also learned a lot about alien fighting techniques and military capabilities. The information we gathered helped Earth prepare for eventual contact with the galactic community." Pete showed Jake more documents on the datapad. There were detailed reports about the strengths and weaknesses of different alien species. Were maps of alien territories and descriptions of their weapons and technology. "Walter and I were not just trainers," Pete said. "We were also intelligence gatherers. We spent years learning everything we could about alien military capabilities. That knowledge helped Earth negotiate better treaties when we finally joined the galactic community." Jake realized that his grandfather had been like a spy as well as a trainer. The more he learned, the more impressed he became with Walter Collins. "The program ended 15 years ago," Pete continued. "Most of the people involved went back to normal lives. I became a mechanic because I wanted a quiet job where I could use my technical skills. But I kept all the records and equipment, just in case." "Just in case of what?" Jake asked. "Just in case someone needed proof of what we did," Pete said. "Or in case Earth ever needed experienced military advisors again." Jake looked at his reflection in a piece of polished metal on Pete's workbench. His face was still swollen and bruised. He thought about Commander Vexar's words about humans being weak and having no warrior tradition. "I want to show this to Commander Vexar," Jake said. "I want to prove that he was wrong about humans." Pete shook his head quickly. "No, Jake. That would be very dangerous. This information is still classified. If you show it to aliens, you could get in serious trouble with Earth government. You could also cause diplomatic problems between Earth and other species." "But he humiliated me," Jake said. "He said humans are weak and stupid. He said we have no warrior tradition. This proves he was wrong. Sometimes being right is not as important as being smart," Pete said. "Your grandfather understood that. Could have bragged about his achievements, but he kept them secret because that was the right thing to do." Jake felt frustrated. He had proof that his grandfather was one of the best military trainers in the galaxy, but he could not use it to defend his family's honor. He understood Pete's concerns, but he also felt like he could not let Commander Vexar's insults go unanswered. "What should I do?" Jake asked. Pete put his hand on Jake's shoulder. "You should learn from this experience. To honor your grandfather's memory is to be wise like he was, not to be loud and boastful." But Jake was 17 years old, and 17-year-olds do not always make wise decisions. The next morning, Jake woke up early. His face still hurt, but the swelling had gone down a little. He looked at himself in the mirror and practiced what he was going to say to Commander Vexar. He had Pete's datapad hidden in his work bag. Pete had told him not to show it to anyone. But Jake could not stop thinking about the alien commander's words. Jake worked quietly in the maintenance bay all morning. Pete noticed that something was wrong, but Jake did not want to talk about his plan. When lunchtime came, Jake told Pete he was not hungry and would keep working. Pete looked suspicious, but did not ask more questions. After Pete left for lunch, Jake took the datapad from his bag. His hands were shaking a little as he turned it on. He looked through the photos and documents again. There was so much proof that his grandfather had trained the warriors who became the Emperor Gantal men. Jake put the datapad in his pocket and walked toward the main training hall. The training hall was huge. With high ceilings and bright lights, there were different areas for different types of combat training. Jake could see alien students practicing with weapons, doing physical exercises, and learning fighting techniques from instructors. The sounds of metal hitting metal and heavy breathing filled the air. Jake found Commander Vexar in the center of the hall. The big alien was watching a group of students practice hand-to-hand combat. His yellow eyes followed every movement the students made. When one student made a mistake, Commander Vexar would shout corrections in his deep, grinding voice. Jake walked up to the commander, but his legs felt weak. Commander Vexar was even more frightening when Jake was close to him. The aliens. Black scales looked like real armor, and his claws were longer than Jake's fingers. Commander Vexar, Jake said. His voice came out smaller than he wanted. The alien turned his head to look down at Jake. His yellow eyes seemed to glow brighter when he recognized the human boy. What do you want, lying human child? Commander Vexar said. I thought I told. You two stay away from real warriors. Some of the alien students stopped practicing to watch. Jake felt his heart beating fast, but he pulled the datapad from his pocket. I have proof, Jake said, holding up the device. Proof that my grandfather really did train the Emperor Gantalman. Commander Vexar laughed, a sound like rocks falling down a mountain. More lies. You humans are good at making fake documents. Show me your so-called proof. Jake turned on the datapad and showed the first photo to Commander Vexar. It was the picture of his grandfather Walter standing with Pete next to the Gantal warriors. Commander. Vexar looked at the photo and his laughter stopped. He took the datapad from Jake's hands with his claws, being careful not to break it. He stared at the image for a long time. Where did you get this? Commander asked. His voice was quieter now, but still dangerous. It belongs to Pete Rodriguez, Jake said. He worked with my grandfather in the Shadow Training Corps. More alien students gathered around to see what was happening. Jake could hear them whispering to each other in different alien languages. Commander Vexar scrolled through more photos on the datapad. Jake watched the alien's expression change from anger to confusion to something that looked like shock. These training techniques, Commander Vexar said slowly. I have seen them before. Where? Jake asked. The Emperor Gantalman used these exact fighting methods, the commander replied. These grappling holds, these tactical formations, these strategies for using environment as weapons. I studied their combat recordings for years. Commander Vexar found the documents with Walter's training notes. He read them carefully, his yellow eyes moving quickly across the text. The alien students around them were completely quiet now, waiting to see what would happen. This analysis of Gantal physiology and psychology, the commander continued. It is incredibly detailed. Only someone who spent months working directly with Gantal warriors could know these things. Jake felt a moment of victory. Finally, someone was taking his grandfather's achievements seriously, but Commander Vexar's expression was getting darker. As he continued reading, if this is real, it means humans have been keeping military secrets from the galactic community. It means your species has been lying about your capabilities. We have not been lying, Jake said quickly. We just have not talked about everything. Same thing, Commander Vexar growled. He looked around at all the alien students who were watching. If humans really trained the Emperor Gantalman, then humans are much more dangerous than we thought. Word was spreading quickly through the training hall. More aliens were coming to see what was happening. Jake could hear excited conversations in many different languages. Some aliens looked amazed, others looked worried or angry. This could change everything, said one of the alien instructors who had joined the crowd. Humans have this kind of military knowledge? Why have they been pretending to be peaceful? Maybe they are planning something, said another alien. Maybe they are getting ready for war. Jake realized that Pete had been right to worry. Aliens were not just impressed by his grandfather's achievements, were scared and suspicious. Commander Vexar held up the datapad so more aliens could see it. This human claims his grandfather trained the greatest warriors in the galaxy. True, it means humans have been deceiving us about their military capabilities. That is not true, Jake said loudly. My grandfather was just doing his job. He was helping alien species become better at defending themselves. Or he was learning our secrets so humans could use them against us later, Commander Vexar replied. The crowd of aliens was getting bigger and more agitated. Jake could feel the mood changing from curiosity to hostility. Some of the aliens were looking at him like he was an enemy instead of just a mechanic's helper. I demand proof that these techniques actually work, Commander Vexar announced to the crowd. This human boy claims his grandfather's methods made the Emperor Gantalman invincible. Let him demonstrate these supposedly superior human fighting techniques. Jake felt his stomach drop. I do not know how to fight, he said quietly. Then your grandfather's methods are useless, Commander Vexar said with satisfaction. If a human cannot even use human fighting techniques, how could they be better than alien methods? But I am not a soldier, Jake protested. I'm just a mechanic. Exactly, the commander said. Humans talk about being great warriors, but when challenged, you admit you are just mechanics and farmers and clerks. You have no warrior tradition, no fighting spirit, no real strength. The alien crowd was getting excited again. Many of them were laughing and making comments about weak humans, who could only brag but not fight. Commander Vexar pointed at one of his advanced students. Kreshma, come here. An alien that looked like a cross between a lizard and a cat walked forward. Kreshma was not as big as Commander Vexar, but he was still much larger than Jake. His skin was dark green with lighter stripes. His arms and legs were thick with muscle, and his hands ended in sharp claws. Jake had seen Kreshma training before. The alien was fast and strong and had been studying combat for several years. Kreshma will fight this human boy, Commander Vexar announced. If human training methods are really superior, the boy should be able to defeat my student using his grandfather's techniques. If he loses, he will admit that humans are weak liars, and this fake evidence will be reported to galactic authorities. Jake looked around desperately. The crowd of aliens was watching him with expressions ranging from amusement to hostility. Kreshma was stretching and preparing for combat. The alien student looked confident and relaxed, like he was about to swat a fly. I cannot fight him, Jake said. It would not be fair. I do not have any training. Then you admit your grandfather's. Methods are worthless, Commander Vexar said triumphantly. Jake felt trapped. If he refused to fight, everyone would think he was a coward and that his grandfather's achievements were fake. But if he agreed to fight Kreshma, he would probably get seriously hurt. The alien student was trained and experienced, while Jake had never been in a real fight in his life. I will give you one chance to back down, Commander Vexar said. Admit that your grandfather never trained the Emperor Gantal. Admit that humans are weak and have no warrior tradition. Do this, and I will only have you expelled from the station, instead of reporting you for spreading false military intelligence. Jake looked at the data pad in Commander Vexar's claws. Thought about all the photos of his grandfather training alien warriors. Thought about Pete's stories of the shadow training corps. He thought about his grandfather's legacy and his family's honor. But he also thought about Kreshma's claws and muscles. He thought about how much his face still hurt from Commander Vexar's slap. He imagined what would happen when the trained alien fighter started hitting him with serious intent to harm Jake. Opened his mouth to accept Commander Vexar's offer and admit defeat. But before he could speak, he heard a familiar voice from the back of the crowd. I will take his place. Everyone turned to see who had spoken. Jake felt relief and worry at the same time when he saw Pete Rodriguez walking through the crowd of aliens. Pete looked calm and determined, but Jake knew he was probably very angry about Jake revealing the classified information. Who are you? Commander Vexar demanded. Pete walked to the center of the training hall. Jake noticed that his mentor moved differently now. Instead of the slow, careful steps of an old mechanic, Pete walked with smooth, confident movements. His back was straight and his eyes were focused. It was like watching a completely different person. You want to fight my student? Commander Vexar asked. He sounded amused. You are just an old human mechanic. Kreshma has been training for years. He will hurt you badly. Maybe, Pete said calmly. But if Jake is going to represent his grandfather's methods, he should have someone who actually learned those methods. Began taking off his mechanic's coveralls. Underneath, he was wearing a simple gray shirt and dark pants. As he removed the baggy work clothes, Jake was surprised to see that Pete was much more muscular than he looked. His arms and shoulders were strong, and there were several old scars on his skin. I am not responsible if you get injured, Commander Vexar warned. I understand, Pete replied. He started doing simple stretching exercises. Jake watched as Pete's movements became even more fluid and controlled. The quiet, gentle mechanic was disappearing, replaced by someone who moved like a professional fighter. Kreshma looked less confident now. The alien student was staring at Pete with new attention. Something about the way Pete moved was making Kreshma nervous. What are the rules? Pete asked. No weapons, Commander Vexar said. No attacks meant to kill or permanently injure. Fight until one opponent cannot continue or surrenders. Pete nodded. He finished stretching and took a fighting stance that Jake had never seen before. Pete's feet were positioned at an angle. His hands were open instead of closed into fists, and his body was balanced and ready to move in any direction. The crowd of alien students and instructors formed a large circle around Pete and Kreshma. Jake counted more than 50 aliens watching. Many of them were recording the fight with their communication devices. Jake realized that this fight would be seen by aliens all over the station, maybe all over the galaxy. "Begin," Commander Vexar announced. Kreshma immediately charged at Pete with a loud roar. The alien was fast, much faster than any human could normally move. His claws were extended and aimed at Pete's chest. It looked like the fight would be over in seconds, but Pete was not where Kreshma expected him to be. At the last moment, Pete stepped to the side and turned his body. Kreshma rushed past him, hitting nothing but air. As the alien student stumbled forward, Pete grabbed Kreshma's arm and used the alien's own momentum to throw him to the ground. Kreshma hit the floor hard, but rolled and got back to his feet quickly. He turned to face Pete again, this time more carefully. The alien circled Pete slowly, looking for an opening to attack. "Interesting technique," Pete said loudly so everyone could hear. "Using an opponent's strength against them is one of the first things Walter Collins taught alien students. Many species are stronger than humans, so humans learn to fight smarter instead of harder." Kreshma attacked again, this time with a series of quick claw strikes. Pete moved like water, bending and flowing around the attacks without getting hit. He grabbed a loose piece of equipment from the training hall floor and threw it at Kreshma's feet, causing the alien to stumble. "Environmental awareness," Pete explained, while dodging another attack. Walter taught alien warriors to use everything around them as weapons or tools. The battlefield is not just your body against your opponent's body. It is everything in the space you are fighting in. Pete picked up a training staff that was lying nearby and used it to block Kreshma's next attack. But instead of trying to fight with the staff like a sword, Pete used it to trip Kreshma and then threw it aside. "Adaptability," Pete continued. "Do not get attached to any one weapon or technique. Use what works in the moment, then move on to something else." When the situation changes, Kreshma was getting frustrated. Alien student was stronger and faster than Pete, but he could not land any solid hits. Every time Kreshma thought he had Pete cornered, the human would move in an unexpected way or use some part of the environment to escape. "This is not how warriors are supposed to fight," Kreshma complained. "That is exactly the point," Pete replied, grabbed a handful of dust from the floor and threw it in Kreshma's eyes, then swept the alien's legs while he was blinded. Walter Collins taught that there is no supposed to in real combat. There is only what works and what does not work. The alien crowd was watching in amazement. Many of them had never seen fighting techniques like this before. They were used to combat that relied on strength, speed, or traditional weapon skills. Pete's methods were completely different. "Honor means staying alive to protect what you care about," Pete said as he avoided another attack. "Dead warriors cannot protect anyone, no matter how honorable their fighting style was." Commander Vexar was watching the fight with great intensity. His yellow eyes followed every movement Pete made. Jake could see that the alien commander was learning from what he was seeing. Kreshma tried a new strategy. Instead of chasing Pete around the training hall, he stood still and waited for Pete to attack him. The alien student thought he could use his superior reach and strength to counterattack when Pete came close. But Pete did not attack in the way Kreshma expected. Instead of rushing forward, Pete picked up several small objects from around the training hall and threw them at Kreshma from different angles. When Kreshma moved to block the thrown objects, Pete moved in close and used a grappling technique to take the alien to the ground. "Spirection," Pete explained as he held Kreshma in a submission hold. "Make your opponent focus on one thing while you do something else." Walter Collins was a master of this technique. Kreshma struggled to escape from Pete's hold, but the human had positioned himself perfectly. The more Kreshma struggled, the tighter the hold became. "Recognize this hold," Commander Vexar said suddenly. "Emperor Gantal men use this. exact technique in their combat recordings. That is because Walter Collins taught it to them, Pete replied. He maintained the hold while talking. This submission technique was developed specifically for use against larger, stronger opponents. Walter adapted it from human martial arts to work on Gantal physiology. Pete demonstrated the hold more clearly, showing how it used leverage and pressure points to control an opponent regardless of size differences. The Emperor Gantalman became famous for being able to defeat much larger enemies using techniques like this. Kreshma tried one more time to break free, but Pete adjusted his position and made the hold even more secure. Finally, the alien student tapped the ground with his hand. It's a universal signal for surrender. Pete immediately released the hold and helped Kreshma stand up. The alien student was breathing hard but did not seem seriously injured. "Are you hurt?" Pete asked with genuine concern. "No," Kreshma replied. He looked confused and impressed at the same time. "I do not understand how you defeated me."
"You are
smaller and older than me." "Because I fought like a human instead of trying to fight like an alien," Pete explained. "Humans developed these techniques because we had to. We are not the strongest or fastest species, so we learned to be the smartest fighters." The alien crowd was completely silent. Many of them looked shocked by what they had witnessed. Jake felt proud and amazed as he watched Pete calmly put his coveralls back on over his clothes. "Commander." Vexar walked over to Pete, the alien commander's expression was serious and thoughtful. "These techniques," Commander Vexar said slowly. "How many alien species did you teach them to?" "Several," Pete replied honestly. "The Shadow Training Corps worked with many different alien governments. Over the years, we've adapted our methods for each species' unique abilities and weaknesses, and all of this was kept secret from the galactic community?" Pete nodded. "Earth government thought it was better to keep these programs classified. We were not trying to deceive anyone. We were just being careful." Commander Vexar was quiet. For a long time, he looked at the datapad that still contained Walter Collins' training records. Then he looked at Pete, who had just demonstrated that human fighting methods were not only real, but incredibly effective. "I owe you an apology," Commander Vexar said finally. "I was wrong about human capabilities. I let my prejudices cloud my judgment." The alien commander turned to face Jake. "I also owe you an apology, young human. Your grandfather was clearly a remarkable warrior and teacher. I should not have struck you for honoring his memory." Jake felt a mixture of relief and vindication. Finally, someone was recognizing his grandfather's achievements in treating humans with respect, but Jake also noticed that some of the aliens in the crowd still looked worried or suspicious. Pete's demonstration had proven that humans were much more capable fighters than most aliens realized. For some aliens, this was impressive. For others, it was frightening. "What happens now?" Jake asked. Commander Vexar looked around at all. The aliens who had witnessed the fight, many of them were still recording everything with their devices. "Now, we have some very important decisions to make," the commander said. The training hall remained quiet after Pete's victory. Aliens who had been talking and recording the fight were now standing in silence, thinking about what they had seen. Jake looked around and noticed that some of the aliens seemed impressed, while others looked worried or even scared. Commander Vexar was still holding the datapad with Walter Collins' training records. He scrolled through more documents, reading carefully. His yellow eyes moved back and forth across the screen for several minutes before he spoke again. "These files contain information about military capabilities of dozens of alien species," Commander Vexar said. "Battle tactics, physical weaknesses, psychological profiles. How did humans gather all this intelligence?" Tate wiped sweat from his forehead with a towel. "We did not spy on anyone," he said calmly. "We learned these things while training alien warriors. When you teach someone to fight better, you have to understand how their body and mind work. Walter Collins was especially good at analyzing different species and figuring out the best training methods for each one. But you kept all this information," one of the alien instructors pointed out. "Why?" "Because that was our job," Pete replied. "The Shadow Training Corps was not just about helping alien species become better fighters. We were also supposed to learn about galactic military capabilities so Earth could prepare for eventual contact with alien civilizations." Jake listened carefully to Pete's explanation. He was learning things about his grandfather's work that Pete had not told him before. Commander. Vexar found a document that made him stop reading. According to this file, humans trained military advisors for the Zephyrian Alliance, the Korth Federation, and the Galactic Trade Union. These are some of the most powerful governments in known space. Yes, Pete confirmed. Walter and I worked with all of them at different times. Each government wanted to improve their military capabilities, and they heard that humans had developed effective training methods. This means humans have been involved in galactic military affairs for decades, Commander Vexar said. His voice sounded concerned. But when Earth joined the galactic community 15 years ago, your government said you were a peaceful species with limited military experience. Pete nodded slowly. That was mostly true. Earth had never fought a war against alien species. We'd never conquered other planets or built a galactic empire. But we had studied warfare extensively because we knew we would eventually meet other intelligent species. We wanted to be prepared. A female alien instructor who looked like a tall bird with blue feathers stepped forward. If humans can train warriors like the Emperor Gantal, why did you hide this capability? Why pretend to be weak? Because being underestimated is sometimes an advantage, Pete explained. And because we did not want other species to see us as a threat, Earth wanted to join the galactic community as friends and trading partners, not as conquerors. Jake was beginning to understand the complexity of the situation. His grandfather and Pete had helped make humans safer by training alien allies. But they had also gathered information that could be used if humans ever needed to defend themselves. Commander. Vexar closed the datapad and looked directly at Pete. How many humans have this level of combat training? It's not many, Pete said honestly. The Shadow Training Corps has never had more than 50 active members. Most of them have retired to civilian jobs, like I did. But we still maintain our skills. Just in case? Just in case of what? Commander Vexar asked. Just in case Earth ever needs experienced military advisors again, Pete replied. Or in case we need to defend human colonies from hostile alien species. The alien crowd was getting restless. Jake could hear them talking quietly among themselves in different languages. Some of them sounded excited, others sounded worried. Will happen to us now? Jake asked. He was thinking about Pete's warning that revealing classified information could cause serious problems. Commander, Vexar thought for a moment before answering. It depends on how we handle this situation. The information you have shown me could cause panic among some alien species. If they learn that humans have been secretly involved in galactic military affairs, some governments might see this as a threat. But it could also be an opportunity, said Kreshma, who had been listening quietly since his defeat. If human training methods are this effective, maybe we could learn from them officially, instead of keeping everything secret. Pete looked interested in this suggestion. What do you mean? I mean that the New Horizons training facility could invite human instructors to teach classes openly, Kreshma explained. Instead of hiding human military knowledge, we could share it with species who want to learn. Commander Vexar's eyes lit up with understanding. A cultural exchange program. Humans could teach their adaptive fighting techniques to alien students, and humans could learn alien methods in return. That could work, Pete agreed. But it would have to be done carefully. Some of the more advanced techniques would still need to remain classified for security reasons. Jake felt excited about this possibility. You mean my grandfather's methods could be taught to aliens all over the galaxy? Some of them, yes, Pete said. The basic principles of adaptive fighting, environmental awareness, and tactical thinking could be shared safely. The more sensitive, intelligence information would stay classified. Commander Vexar turned to address the crowd of aliens who had watched the fight. I want everyone here to understand something important. What you have witnessed today must be reported accurately to your home governments. Humans are not the weak species we thought they were, but they are also not our enemies. They have been helping alien species become stronger for decades. Several aliens in the crowd nodded their agreement. Others still looked uncertain. Will the galactic authorities investigate this? Asked one of the alien students. Probably, Commander Vexar admitted. But I will recommend that the investigation focus on establishing official cooperation programs, rather than punishing past secret activities. What humans did was not hostile, it was cautious and intelligent. Pete walked over to Jake and put his hand on the teenager's shoulder. You did something very brave today, but also very dangerous. You need to understand that some secrets exist. For good reasons. I understand now, Jake said. But I'm glad people know the truth about Grandpa Walter. So am I, Pete replied with a smile. Your grandfather would be proud of how you defended his honor. But he would also want you to learn from this experience about the importance of thinking before acting. Commander Vexar handed the datapad back to Pete. I would like to propose something. Would you be willing to demonstrate some of Walter? Colin's training methods to my advanced students? Nothing classified? Just the basic principles you showed us today? Pete considered this request carefully. I could teach some basic adaptive fighting techniques. I could explain the philosophical approach that Walter used when training alien warriors. But any species-specific information would have to remain secret. Agreed, Commander Vexar said immediately. Jake watched as arrangements were made for Pete to return to the training hall the following week to give demonstrations. It was amazing to think that his grandfather's methods would finally be shared, openly with alien students. What about me? Jake asked. Will I get in trouble for revealing classified information? Commander Vexar looked at Pete, who nodded slowly. I think we can arrange for this incident to be classified as an unauthorized disclosure that led to improved diplomatic relations. No formal charges will be filed, but you will need to complete some additional security training. Jake felt relieved. He had been worried that his impulsive decision to confront Commander Vexar would get him expelled from the station or arrested by Earth authorities. As the crowd of aliens began to disperse, many of them came over to speak with Pete and Jake. Some wanted to apologize for laughing at Jake's claims about his grandfather. Others wanted to ask Pete questions about human fighting techniques. Kreshma approached Jake with a respectful expression. I am sorry for underestimating your species. Your grandfather must have been an exceptional warrior and teacher. Thank you, Jake replied. And you fought very well. Pete said you learned quickly during the demonstration. I would like to learn more, Kreshma said. If your mentor agrees to teach classes, I will be his first student. Jake looked around the training hall and saw aliens from many different species talking excitedly about what they had witnessed. Some were already making plans to attend Pete's future classes. Pete walked over to Jake with a satisfied expression on his face. That could have gone much worse. Are you angry with me for revealing the classified information? Jake asked. A little, Pete admitted. But I am also proud of you for defending your grandfather's memory. It looks like something good might come from your mistake. Jake thought about everything that had happened. 2 days ago, he had been just a mechanic's apprentice who liked to brag about his grandfather. Now he was involved in creating new diplomatic relationships between humans and aliens. Do you think Grandpa Walter would approve of what happened today? Jake asked. Pete smiled as he put his coveralls back on. I think Walter would say that the best way to honor the past is to build a better future. If his training methods